Hi, this is Sean Hafer, and in this tutorial, we'll be looking at the differences between parametric primitive objects and polygonal or editable objects. So if I come over here and I just create a cube, so if we, again, click over here, we've got all of our primitives, and all of these are parametric. They're all kind of created mathematically based on their center point or their own origin, if you want to think of it that way. So the center point here of this cube is at 0, 0, 0, and it is looking at the idea of length times width times height. So we see here we've got our x and y and z to create this cube on the fly. So it's looking at those numbers mathematically to create it. It doesn't see it as 6 sides or 8 points. And even if I try to get up here and I click on my polygon tool, I can't select anything. Even if I go to selection, there's no polygons to select, there's no edges, and there's no points because right now it's just being created mathematically or parametrically. Now we can still get in here, and if I click it, we can see all of our attributes. I could come in here and type, 500, get a nice 500 centimeter tall box. I can click on these little yellow dots and do the same kind of thing, and you can see all of my attributes change over here. I can subdivide it on the fly, right? So if I do here and I go to 2, 2, 2, now I'm not seeing it because by default, our display is set to Garrod shading. So it gives us this little preview of things so we can kind of feel that it's in a physical space. But if I come down to the next one, Garrod shading lines, now we can see that subdivision that happened when I changed that to 2, 2, 2. You can see if I crank it up to 4, 4, 4, we get a subdivision, 4 polygons in each axes. And that's one of the advantages of parametric. You can kind of set all that up and change that on the fly if you need to, but you still can't get in there and grab those polygons or those points. The other nice thing with parametrics, a lot of times you'll either have a fillet like on this one. So if I came in, and let me go back to my 200, 200, 200. Okay. And if I came down to my fillet radius, which is my sort of bevel radius, go into a 10. And then on the subdivisions here, we can see that right now it's 3. That might be a little rough if we got up close to it. So I'm going to make that 5. And if I hit my little preview, we can kind of see it's catching the light now. We've got that edge. Now, if I come up to my Redshift Start IPR, or my interactive preview render, now we can see if I turn that off, the fillet, again, not as realistic, right? It's not catching the light. But with that fillet back on, it really can catch the light for us. So I'll leave that there and I'll turn off my little preview here. Okay, so that's kind of the big things that we can do here with a parametric. There's no way to scale it along a certain plane though. So if I went over here to my scale tool and I wanted to just scale it in the X, it's going to just scale the entire object because again, it's looking at these dimensions. So if I go back to my 200, 200, 200, and then on my X, if I wanted to make it longer, I could just click in there and say what I need it to be. Okay, cool. So now let's say, let me move this over a little bit. I'm going to go to my move tool or hit E. I'm just going to drag this back a little bit and I'll zoom out a little bit by rotating my mouse button. And now I'm going to just make a copy. And the way to make a copy is I'm going to hold down my Command or Control and just grab that axis and drag it. So I'm going to drag it over here a little bit. So this one here is also now just an exact copy. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this one editable. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that bevel or that fillet. So I'm going to turn it off. And then with that selected, I'm just going to come down here and go to my Make Editable. And now we can see, instead of the little cube icon, it now has just like a little triangular polygon icon. And we know now that is editable. And we also can tell, if I click on the cube, we get all of our properties for the object, including our fillet. If I click on this that says cube, it just has not much, right? Our display color, all that. And we don't have the little yellow parametric handles to drag it out. We can't turn on a fillet, any of that stuff. But if I click on my polygons, I can grab a polygon now and I could drag it out. I could go to my scale tool and I could scale it down. Okay, so we start to have a lot more features of editability. I'm going to undo and undo. I could also grab an edge, or I could grab a couple edges. So if I shift click these guys, I could scale that whole top down there, right? I could undo that. I could just grab an edge and move that edge somewhere by going to my move tool. And then maybe scale it as well. So creating some pretty funky shapes. Undo, undo. And then same thing, points. You can see we can grab individual points. And we could move those or scale those or whatever we want to do. So points as well. Scale those points. Move one point down. Right, so again, a lot of options. So I'm going to undo until I get back to my original cube. And we can kind of think, so if we did want to bevel these, all right, there's a couple things we could do. I could come in here and select an edge. And then I could do my Command or Control A for select all. Now I can see all my edges are selected. And I can come over here and click on my bevel tool. And now we can see we've got all these options over here. So on the offset, if I click my 10, hit Tab, and then Subdivision 5, which I had before, and hit Apply, you can see I've got that. Now what I can also do is once I hit that bevel tool, is just click and drag. Right, so I can click and drag a little bit. And then before I do anything though, I can always come over here, if I don't click anything else, and adjust it. So there I could say I've got my 10 and my 5, and that's great. So now those look exactly the same, with the advantage of I could grab these guys. Now, the disadvantage is that if I wanted to make this longer or scale this out, right? So if I took my whole cube here and went back to my object tool and I went to scale and I scaled it on the X, you can see it stretches out the bevel. Now, one way around that is I could grab those actual polygons by just coming in here, and I'm going to, instead of just a brush selection, I'll do a rectangle selection and sort of marquee around that front edge. And now I could just drag those out and you can see it stays the same size. So that gives us a nice little similar look. So I think the big takeaway here so far is that with a parametric object, you can do a lot of things on the fly and try things out to kind of and turn things back off and readjust things. Once you get into editable, you're kind of, you know, the undo is really your only kind of way back. So you've got to think a little bit more when you start doing things that are kind of destructive, like, you know, creating a bevel or anything like that. All right. Now, one other thing we could do though, let's say I wanted to create one more cube, and I'm going to go back to my parametric cube, do the same thing, go to model, drag that over, hold down Command or Control, and move it over here. And on this one, we'll do the same thing. I'm going to make it editable, but first I'm going to turn off my fillet. And I'm going to hit that Make Editable. If for some reason in here I realize, ooh, I'm going to be using a subdivision surface or something else I'm going to need more subdivisions for. So I could always come back in here and go 2, 2, 2. Right? I don't have that option here once it's editable, but I could come in and with it selected, use my knife tool or my cut tool. So let me select my polygons. Down here is our cut, so loop path cut. And you can see as I drag along here, it shows how it's going to cut. If I hold down Shift, it'll stick to the center or in thirds. So I'm going to go to the center, it'll snap, click it once, go down around this side, snap, and go around the center bit, snap. So now we can see I've got my subdivisions. But again, those are permanent, right? I can't really make them go away if I need to. But, so beveling this now, I'd have to select all these edges, or there's some other options. We can use what's called a modifier. If I come over here, you can see it looks like it's a little bend, but at the very bottom of that left column, there's bevel. And if I take that and drag it so that arrow points down and make it a child of the cube, you can see we get this little bevel started. And by clicking the bevel, we can see all these options. And I can do the same thing here. Let's say I want to do 10, right? And so it doesn't have any subdivision yet, so it's just flat surfaces on the bevel. But let's give it those 5 like the others, and now we've got the same thing. So these modifiers are really great because they can give you a option, kind of like giving you parametric options on top of polygonal benefits. So say with this cube, if I wanted to cut a hole or do an inset inside here, what I could do is come up here. I've got that polygon selected. I come over here to my inset tool, click and drag, and then I could come over here to my extrude tool and click and drag and create an inset. Now the thing is, to bevel that, to get a nice clean bevel around that, I would need to grab those edges. So I could come up here to my loop select, which is right here, loop selection. So I could grab that and then shift select that. And then maybe I want to grab that one, and there's some other ways we could do this a little easier, but I'm just going to do it the very labor-intensive way, just to make a point. And we grab that one. So we've made all those selections. Now I could go to my bevel tool, right? So which is right here, and click and drag. And I'd want that to go to 10. Right? And so let's see how that looks. Okay. It's got some funky corners. There's just some issues with the math and what's happening there, but it might work in a pinch. The cleaner way to get those bevels to kind of work for us is if we came in here to our other cube. It has a bevel on it. I'm going to turn the bevel off for a second. And we grab our 4 polys here. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool. Grab them. This time I'm going to right click and do enter, or hit I for inset. Bring that in about the same size. Now what I can also do is hold down Command and just use my axis tool, and that'll do our extrude for us without having to select the tool, so it can be really fast. So I can push that back. Now the advantage here is if I turn that bevel back on, we get a nice clean bevel. So a little bit still in the corners. I mean, it's a pretty tight corner for a 10 centimeter bevel probably. So maybe on this case, I would want to take it down to maybe 8 and see if that looks cleaner. But the nice thing here is we can do those adjustments and we can see what works better for us. Now for us to do that on this one, it'd be really hard, right? We would have to make it editable in some way to cut that. Well, actually, maybe not. Let's try this. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go to my cube, turn off my bevel, or my fillet, sorry. And what we'll do is we'll use a Boolean, which is a generator. So I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to copy it. Command C, Command V, and we're going to call this negative cube, or cutout. Let's just call it cutout. Let's make it, I don't know, 100, 100, 100. And let's pull it out. Go back here and go to my model tool. Let's pull it out and see how big it is. It's a little small, so let's scale it up. I'm going to hit my T, and let's get it around the same size. Now if I come up here into these green area, these are kind of our generators. We can come over here to Boolean. And with a Boolean, that adds or subtracts objects from each other. So I could come in here, grab my cube, And then I'm going to grab my cutout and put that in right under the cube. So I don't want it to be a child of the cube, but I want it to be right in the same level. So sometimes it's a little tricky to get those to work. Now, if I click on the Boolean, you can see by default it says union. So it's going to add these together. You can also do subtract and intersect or without. So if I do subtract, boom, we get our nice clean cut. Now, the cool thing about this too is I could always come in here, go to my scale tool, hit T, and then we could do fine tune adjustments. We could animate this, kind of moving in and out of it. So the cut starts and goes in and out. So if you needed something, an engine part or something moving like this, you could just animate this cube. So I'll do kind of that. Now, if we turn our fillet on our cube though, we could try that. So I'm going to go to both of these at the same time, shift select them. Let's turn on our fillet. Oh, it's not giving, we don't get that outside edge. We're getting kind of something nice in here, but that's not really working, is it? So let me take this one to 10 just so it looks the same. So we don't get the outside. There's really no way. It doesn't understand enough. Let's try one more thing. We come in here, high quality normals. Yeah, I don't think it's going to do it. No, but that's okay. So what we could do, let's get rid of those fillets. And this is where sometimes, even though you're using something parametric, you might want a modifier on it that you might use for something that's polygonal or editable. So let's do the same thing here. We'll grab our old friend, the bevel modifier. And then what we'll do is we'll just put that in the same range here. So it's at the same level as the cube and the cutout. And let's set it to 10. And then make sure we put our subdivision in there. 5. And then we get our nice clean bevel. Okay. So if we do a quick render, we can kind of see. It's not doing what we need to do, is it? So let me double check. My cube here, fillets off. Cube here, fillets off. So we're seeing it here, but it's not rendering. So what can happen sometimes with this Boolean, I'm going to turn off the high quality normals, but sometimes with these, it's looking at the sort of the way it's calculating stuff. Okay, that's all it was, the high quality normals. So we took that off, and now we've got our bevel, and it's in there. So we can see that we have multiple ways to approach all of these. Let me group all these together. I'm going to select them all, and just hit a Option or Alt-G to group them. And I'm just going to hide these so we can kind of keep them there if we need them. And let's create another cube, parametric. And I'll click and drag with a command and just make a copy and rotate it around. So one of the advantages here too of using parametric or making something editable, I said in the very beginning, was if we make that editable and I grab that polygon, I can pretty quickly scale it down and make a little sort of pyramid shape, right? Now we do have a pyramid primitive, right? Could I just use that? So I can grab that, bring it over. If I look at that, we don't have an option for a top radius. So we're kind of stuck there. So let me get rid of that. I'll delete that. The only thing we've got, I know that has a top radius is a cone. So if I drag that over, we look at that, and I could set that top radius, right? So I could come in here and look at my top radius, and maybe we get that out. But what we could do is in our rotation segments right here, that's 16. We bring this all the way down to 4. Now we've got kind of a similar thing. So these are what, 200 by 200 by 200? So we think about that bottom radius. It looks like it's similar, but it's not quite there, is it? So let's look at it from the top. And let's see what's happening here. All right, so first off, it's rotated 45 degrees. So we can always come in here and grab that, hit our rotate tool, grab just that green gizmo, the green axis, our Y, start moving it and hold down Shift, 25, 35, 40, 45. Okay, so we can see we're lined up there, but it's still not giving us exactly that same size. So I'm going to go ahead and see what happens if I just change my bottom radius. looks like I've got to get out to 135 almost. That's kind of odd. Now I think what it is because again, its radius is its diagonal versus these are, the edge. So I bet our diagonal would have been 200 before. So if we get that, we're close. And then we've got our height segments. We could take that down to 1. And now we've got a very similar shape for that. So you can get into, using another primitive to get a similar shape. It's still parametric, so I could turn on its caps fillets or caps bevels, which is a little different on some of these. So if I turn on top and bottom, the radius, we want 10. The height, we want 10. On the bottom, same thing. But then our fillet segments are all the way at the bottom here, and we do 5. And then let's see if there we go. Now we can get a nice view of that. And it gives us a little bevel. Now the only disadvantage here, we're not getting a bevel on these edges. Okay. But what we could do, if we needed to keep this in the same sort of way, but we wanted to distort this, inside our modifiers, there are quite a few things that can do, especially in this area, do some fun distortions. So if I grab a taper, drag that under my parametric cube, make it a child. Then I'm going to click on this little button, Fit to Parent. If I grab that strength and crank it up, and I'm going to drag this curvature down and give it a little, just so it's straight. It's not really affecting it when this curvature is on, and that's because we don't have any subdivisions going up. It's only one, so you can't bend one polygon. You can't bend it or curve it. Now, if I would give it some more height segments in my Y, you can see now that taper does that curve. But if I came down here now and brought that curve down to 0, we would just get a straight up and down. So that's another thing you can use to kind of get some of these options. If I go to my cube and turn on my fillet and do my 10 and my 5, the taper is tapering the fillet too. So that's not what we wanted. So what we could do, turn off our fillet on the cube. So there's always a way around these things, right? Turn off the taper there and just grab one of our bevels. So we bring the bevel down, just nestle it under the taper, hit our bevel, give it the 10 by with 5 subdivisions, and there we go. We've got all that, which we could then come in and adjust the cube, adjust the taper, whatever we wanted to do. So hopefully this just gave you a good idea of how some of these differences can help you or hinder you in different situations. The more you use Cinema, the more you'll figure out when it's best to maybe make something editable right away, or maybe you start with the parametric and you just get it to the point you want and then you make it editable. So like, for example, on this one here that we just made, if I look at this, I've got a cube, taper, and a bevel. Now, if I make this cube editable, so we would think, oh, that's going to make everything great, right? And then I open it, So it didn't do what we expected. We expected it to just sort of keep that shape, right? But it's still just a cube, and it didn't apply the taper and the bevel. The difference with that is, if I take my cube now, go down to current state to object, and I hit let go of that, now you can see, here's my cube, all right? But up here, just move him along, E. Go to my object tool, there we go. And we can move him out of the way. Now, with that current state to object, it keeps the old one, right? So this is our old one. I could just delete that though now. And now we've got this editable, just polygons, kind of pyramid shape, right? And now I could get in here and do all my stuff like extrude inner, or inset it, extrude, right? All of these things that I'd want to do, scale that down and kind of create some different shapes. So hopefully that kind of gave you a good insight onto sort of what these kind of differences are and how we can go from parametric and use some of these modifiers in generators like the Boolean to create the shapes we need, the tapers, all of that type of stuff, our extrudes on a polygon, our insets on polygons, our scaling, all of that stuff can get us to the point where we get the shape we need. But it's sort of getting used to knowing when you use what tool. And sometimes it doesn't matter if you get to where you need to go, right? And again, or you might get it to the point and realize something's not quite right. So you sort of start over and do it a little bit different, which it'll go a lot faster. It always does on the second time. But it just is with more experience and time and practice, you'll kind of start to get a second sense in like what might work. But not always. Sometimes you'll think you know what to do. You'll still go down and run into a dead end, and you'll just have to think about it and back up and try a different way. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.